1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back. It is Wednesday, October 16th. We are headed into week 7 of the NFL season. Things are rolling along here quickly. We are coming off a week with several bye weeks, couple bye weeks this week for teams, and we got a London game. We've got 2 Monday night games, so we've got another little bit smaller main slate that we're dealing with. Also coming off a week in which the Cowboys implosion kind of stole the show, along with some interesting, a wild game in New Orleans between the Bucs and Saints. A lot of interesting stuff going on. And then across the NFL, we've got a couple of blockbuster wide receiver trades that just happened yesterday, with Davante Adams going to the Jets, Amari Cooper going to the Bills. Yet to be determined what those situations will look like, as far as will those guys be active right away and what their roles might look like. So probably get more news on that as the week goes on. We're still here on Wednesday, so a lot to dissect, and we'll have to pay attention for the next few days. With that being said, we are going to bring in my esteemed colleague, Maximus. How are we doing today?
Hello.
Welcome back.
Holy breaking news yesterday, Batman.
Yeah. Things, it sounds like, and somebody was saying that Adams was on a flight before the game was over on Monday night. So the Jets, that trade was done during the game, basically during the Monday night game. So kind of wild. I guess it's a business and is what it is. But, and then for the game to end how it did, with Williams allegedly running the wrong route, and now peace, you're done. Yeah.
You heard it here first a couple of weeks ago, just for the Davante Adams. I remember we went over that and I was speculating, that suspicious hamstring injury. I don't know. He may not be a Raider much longer. So it finally came to fruition. But I'm curious to get as a coach too, your take on the immediate effect of these two players with their teams for week 7. If they need to learn the offense, or is it like plug and play because they're elite? Curious to get your take on the effect of them for this week.
So I think that for the Jets, because Nathaniel Hackett got brought in, former Packers offensive coordinator. Then he was with the Broncos. He's not good. But he was brought in because he's Rodgers' guy, right? And he basically, to install the offense that Rodgers wants to install. The issue is he's a terrible play caller. And just conceptually, he's kind of out of his depth. I think he's probably a pretty good position coach. I think he was Packers quarterback coach. That's why him and Rodgers are so tight. But so looking at the Jets, they fired their head coach, Robert Saleh, who's more of a defensive guy, but they also, they made Todd Downing, they promoted him to offensive coordinator, he is now calling the plays. From what I understand, they basically told told Hackett, we're going to have somebody else call the plays, which is essentially the offensive coordinator's job. So they gave him the option to stick around and just kind of be there. Or, they could let him go, and obviously they're still going to have to pay him whatever. He decided to stick around. So whatever that's for, but I'm digressing here. The question as to how they will fit in, I think Adams, I think his hamstring's fine. It might have been a little bit of a thing to start, but it's been 3 weeks now. And he's going to know everything inside and out. He's obviously has rapport, his history with Rodgers. He's going to understand the concepts, and he should be able to pretty much plug and play, come in with him and Garrett Wilson, kind of being the, co-alphas. There was a question in our Discord about somebody for their regular fantasy football league. They have Wilson and Adams now, and they're like, do I need to trade one of them? Whatever. And, I think we've seen before. I mean, last year you would have been fine with Nico and Tank Dell. You would have been fine with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill years before that. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Like, it's just a situation where these two guys are probably going to account for 50 to 60% of the targets like every single week. That might fluctuate where one guy gets more than the other, but I just think it's going to kind of push like the Lazard and Conklin types. They're the ones who are going to get squeezed a little more. And I think the offense is going to be really good. They did look good against the Bills. They moved the ball well. They were doing a lot of good things. I mean, really, they just stalled out a couple times. A few times they had good drives and just they didn't get in the end zone. And then their kicker kept missing. So looked worse than it was. But like, they scored 20 points. I mean, it easily could have been 34 points or, 31 points. So, and now you add Adams to that. So I'm really high on the Jets offense. For the Bills, I think Cooper, I think the immediate for this week, I don't know how involved he will be. I think he'll play, but I think it'll be like kind of a rotationary situation with like Mac Hollins, just because he is coming into a little bit of a new situation. But I think he provides that like downfield threat. Like, he's basically going to eventually take Mac Hollins' place. And I think what the Bills will look like is Amari is that like X receiver running downfield routes to open things up, which they've kind of been lacking. No defense is scared of Mac Hollins, unless they have the refs from Monday night that'll just call pass interference. But then I think they're gonna, by week 10 or 11, I think it'll be Amari on, running those routes, and then you've got Keon Coleman on the other side, and then Shakir as like the slot guy, and then you've got Kincaid and Knox, who I think basically it'll be when they have two tight end sets, they'll both be out there. When it's a one tight end set, it'll be one of them with Shakir on the field. So those three will kind of split up two positions, if that makes sense. But I think Amari opens that offense up, and I think they start throwing at a higher rate now because they have that field stretching presence. I think they've been running a lot somewhat out of necessity. So I am interested to see how it plays out. I don't know. And the Bills play the Titans. It's at home against the Titans. Like, I think their defense might just house Will Levis. And they don't really need to do too much with Amari. But long-term, I'm pretty bullish on the move.
Yeah, I agree. I think Amari's going to open it up for possible spike weeks from the other players periodically throughout the year. Whereas on the Jets side of the ball, it's probably going to be more concentrated as a result of Adams being there. So, yeah, I'm going to be really interested how both those situations pan out.
Yeah, I would say, and for what we've seen from Amari, I think he's pretty consistently had, like, he gets a good amount of targets, but like, and a lot of them are downfield, but like they're not even close, right? Because Watson's missing. I think he's going to have more weeks. He's going to have some weeks where he just has like 2 or 3 targets and it's kind of left out. But he's already having some down weeks anyways, from production standpoint. I think on the weeks where he gets, 9, 10 targets, he's going to have some really big weeks just because of the offense he's in and who's throwing to him now. He went from the outhouse to the penthouse with Deshaun to Josh Allen. So, quickly, we'll go over this last week. In your contest, you usually play the $65 5-entry max touchdown. We had so you had a lineup took 19th place, but then you also could see here 1 week season flying the banner subscriber R Zombie took 4th place with a lineup that had Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, Amari, who we were just talking about. And then they had Bucky Irving, Derrick Henry. They had Tyrone Tracy going in the late game, 30% in that contest, a little bit sharper playing field, I think. So, yeah, I think Chase Brown, somebody jumped him with Chase Brown touchdown, and he was 5 off the lead. So if that game had found a way to go to overtime, maybe Tracy could have got him there.
Yeah, congrats, our zombie. I do see him in this contest now and he usually maxes it like I do every week. And yeah, this is called the NFL touchdown. It's usually 400 to 500 entrants. Usually between 23 to 25% of the field gets paid on it. And it's pretty good structure. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. And yeah, we had a lot of the same setup on our teams. I had a couple of duds. But yeah, Tyrone Tracy was definitely a great Sunday night. And to piggyback off that, good news that I saw from you in our Discord, and that you'll start to be doing the DFS interpretation for the Sunday night game, which will be extremely helpful to us FanDuel OWS players accounting for that game that we have to every week.
Yeah, usually Zanimir has just handled those kind of island games because it's, he does the showdown slant. But yeah, since FanDuel is obviously sticking with this format of having the Sunday night game, which I personally really enjoy, it'll be we'll be sticking with that and having myself do a DFS interpretation from like a main slate perspective. And obviously I'll mainly talk from like a FanDuel lens on that. So, and it obviously, it's a pretty critical game weekly just because of, from the perspective of like late swap and information and that sort of thing, like we saw with Derrick Henry the other day or a couple weeks ago. The leverage it provides, people who are, consuming content that is mostly focused on DraftKings, which does not include the Sunday night game. Some of these guys can go overlooked sometimes, but then also I think that, there will be occasions this year where people, like everyone wants to have like a guy or two left no matter what. And some weeks that's not a good idea. So, I think there will be probably some weeks where it'll be a game we actually want to avoid, at the end of the day, when we're looking back at it, like we don't know. I mean, we know, but like if you didn't know, you just are looking at the stats. It doesn't actually matter when the game was played, just how many points you score. So, both sides of it. There's sometimes where you can really leverage it, and sometimes you want to avoid it. And we'll go through all of that. So yeah, let's get into this week. I'm going to pull up. So FanDuel's got some things going on this week. They've got, of course, their Sunday Million, the $15 entry. They also give you $2 back for each entry after they credit you back. If you do at least 5 entries in it, they give you $2 back after the fact. So, a little bit more cost effective, I guess. And then their Sunday NFL Rush here, their $3 tournament, they pay out the top 50%. So, it's only $4 that the min cash is, but still it's almost like a cash game, but then there's a bunch of upside with 100K to first place. So like structure wise, really good tournament. And then this week they have a $250 Millie Maker. Now the structure here isn't necessarily what you're looking for, with nearly half of the prize pool going to first place. Obviously a huge drop off there from $1 million to first, to 100K to second. But for a 10,000 entry tournament, relatively small for to be able to win $1 million. So kind of an interesting one. I'll probably be throwing one in here and checking that out. Shot at changing things up, right? So we'll see. So we'll build again for any tournament, but I'll open that one up to build in that, and I'll let you take it from here. Who is where are we starting this week for our lineup?
All right. Well, we're going to cover, going to build around the team that, at least on the show, we haven't really touched on this year yet. But that I can recall. But yeah, this team is a game environment. I think there's 4 game environments that I think are really appealing this week. One in the 4 o'clock window in particular. But we're going to go ahead and build around a team that is amazingly undefeated, coming off a bye week, and is facing a pass funnel defense, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm going to go for the low-hanging fruit on one of the stacking partners with Darnold, even though he is, of course, elitely priced. I want to pair him with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on the lower end of the spectrum, a really solid wide receiver 2. And then if we expect them to push the envelope and have success, I'd love the bring back to be unbiasedly. He did account for my first place finish in week 1, but he has just been, doing a lot with a little, other than I think 1 week this season, and that is Jameson Williams as a bring back for the Lions. We love the running backs for the Lions. You could easily account for Gibbs on the passing front. Montgomery has just been a wrecking ball of touchdowns every week. But in this case, if Minnesota is going to have success, I feel they will force Detroit to have to go maybe more uncomfortably to the passing game. It's in Minnesota. Jameson Williams' price hasn't really changed too much over the course of the season so far, and the pricing is getting tighter, I'm noticing in some spots. But yeah, I think that's in my opinion, a good start here with the double stack with Darnold. Darnold more viable on FanDuel with the new rules that got put into place this year with the passing bonuses, and then a viable bring back, and then and then we could take it from there. Definitely a good pay up defense week as well. Hard to get there when you put Jefferson in. One other thing to monitor before I throw it back to you is if TJ Hawkinson plays this week. We're not sure about that yet, but maybe hesitant on week 1 coming back, and they probably ease him in, but he's definitely going to be a factor pretty soon, as I think he is nearing return, which we all love for best ball. But anywho, I will throw it back to you with that core beginning.
Yeah, I like where your head is at with some of this. Darnold he's been really good, really efficient. As you said, they're 5-0. But he's had very good performances. But like Jefferson has not had a spike week. Addison missed some time. Obviously, he played week 1 against the Giants, got hurt, came back, had a nice game against the Packers. Saw 8 targets, but didn't really do as much against the Jets in a game that they kind of routed them. And then they had their bye week, and now they're coming back off it. And I do think that the Minnesota offense, Jefferson has a history of kind of going nuts against the Lions. They play a lot of man coverage. And I think that, I think that Darnold and Addison, pairing them with Jefferson, if Jefferson's seen a spike week, he's not going to have a 180-yard 2-touchdown game where Darnold throws for 240 and 2 touchdowns. You know what I mean? There's going to be other guys involved. They're not just going to let him, if he has a monster game, it's part of a bigger pie, I guess. So that means Darnold's probably putting together a nice game, and it's kind of almost a free square at that point. And then, Addison, when you look at the Vikings, so they've got Hawkinson maybe coming back, but I don't know how involved he'll be right away. And then Aaron Jones hurt his hip before the bye week. They've got Ty Chandler. I think it could end up being a situation where if Darnold does, if we look at from a volume perspective, he's only 31 attempts is the most that he has thrown this year. This could be the type of game where he does get up into 40. And if that happens, you're probably looking at 13 to 15 for Jefferson and 7 to 9 for Addison. I think that's a really, really interesting group. You're looking at about 23K for the group combined. So you're going to need roughly 75 points from him to get you on pace, but I think that's very doable. We know Jefferson can get up over 30, and then that scenario we talked about is Darnold's going to be there too, and it's just a matter of is Addison catching some of that the overflow. So I love that. And then along with that, the Lions traditionally have been a pass funnel. I think that the Vikings this year are a pass funnel as well. Their run defense has been very, very good. And so, yeah, I think that the scenario where that grouping of Darnold, Jefferson, Addison hits, you're probably seeing Jameson Williams as the big play threat for Detroit, involved either on the front end, sparking the Vikings, or on the back end, trying to keep up with the Vikings. So love how you put this together. So now we got to probably look at some running backs here. So I'm going to go Kenneth Walker. Let's start there. I think so today our rest of season rankings for quarterbacks and running backs, or mine, came out for the Daily Dose, which is our fantasy football newsletter. And I have Walker in the top 5 running backs, just because of how he's being used. The thing with him in the past was he wasn't really used as a pass catcher, and he has 8 targets in each of the last 2 games. With his, and then he had the 3 touchdown game against Detroit. There's just he's a guy who's ascending right now, and to still only be priced at 7,500. I really like it. And then on the other side of that, I'm going to come back and I am going to play Kyle Pitts at tight end. Don't think we have to correlate again. So it's not necessarily it's not just because of that, but Pitts is a guy I am still pretty high on for the rest of the season. Caught 3 passes. One was like a 50. He's got 2 in the last 4 games. He has 2 catches of 50 plus yards. He has another game against the Bucs where he had 7 for 88. Hasn't scored since week 1, but that is coming. And we've seen Kirk Cousins. We were just talking about Hawkinson. We've seen Kirk Cousins, with TJ Hawkinson, kind of made him a star last year. Loves to target the tight end. Loves Jordan Reed back when he was in his Washington days. He had before his concussions, some really good seasons. So we'll go with them. And then let's throw in a cheap defense here. Let's go with let's just take the Giants. The Giants defense has been pretty good. Last 2 weeks they beat the Seahawks in Seattle, and then they played really well. They gave up that long run to Burrow on Monday night, and then basically held them to a field goal over the next 3 quarters until Brown scored when they were trying to run out the clock. So that leaves us with 68.50 left for a running back and a flex. So what do you think? Any thoughts on the guys I put in, and then who you thinking? You can choose a running back or a flex, and then we'll discuss options from there.
Yeah, pretty telepathic. I also liked Kenneth Walker quite a bit, and the Giants were my practice build defense as well. Sirianni's play calling didn't look too good last week for the Eagles. I mean, I love A.J. Brown coming back, but definitely there's something with the Eagles that they're not quite clicking yet. And obviously you have a division rivalry. New York's been looking good on the defensive end, putting pressure on the quarterback. So, yeah, I like that. I feel we definitely probably need exposure to the Carolina-Washington game to some extent. But I will throw out a value running back that could be in a good situation because of the circumstances. So we have Jerome Ford is week to week with a hamstring, and they say that Nick Chubb will make his first appearance back this week, but I would imagine if he does come back, they would probably ease him in on a snap count. So you mentioned this guy, I think, a few weeks back, but possibly Deontay Foreman, who's coming in at 5,400 at home against Cincinnati. It's not really an imposing defense. If we wanted to go the value route, he could be somebody kind of between the tackles, gets a couple touchdowns in that game, and that would leave a lot of money for the flex spot to kind of do what we want to do. On the top of my head, that's when I was looking at down the list of what could open up value-wise, which typically happens after our show later in the week through injuries and stuff. I think he'd be a candidate based on the circumstances.
Yeah, I think him, and then priced right with him. We talked a little bit about the Bills before, but Ray Davis looked really, really good for Buffalo on Monday night, priced at the same price point. So, if reports are, James Cook could miss again this week, or, be limited. And I think Davis is probably going to stay involved. That toe injury is usually a toe isn't a thing that just like goes away. So I think, if he's kind of nursing that, I would think Davis stays somewhat involved. So do have some options kind of in that range. So yeah, I think I like where your head's at with Foreman and just getting a running back. We're at that time of year where we kind of saw it last week. A bunch of running backs in that mid 5K range opened up, and everyone fell in love with running backs early in the season because we had that 1 week where there was just like 6 guys who scored over 25 points. But generally the way I like to build is to spend anywhere from 5,500 to the mid sevens on running backs, so I can afford, receivers that I'm a little bit higher on.
I think we have a little bit of a freeze up.
You there?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a freeze up.
Okay.
You froze, but maybe I did too. I don't know.
Okay.
But you're good at the moment, though.
All right. So yeah, we've got 8,300 left. Jonathan Taylor potentially coming back against the Dolphins. He's missed a couple games now. Should be Anthony Richardson back under center. Yeah, you got some options here. Joe Mixon's just out of range. I really like him. He had a great, he's played 2 games basically. He left early in the Bears game, got hurt, but he has 29 and 28 points in his 2 full games that he's played, FanDuel points, that is. But I think maybe Deebo Samuel in that late window, coming off a big game, and I think he just kind of fits. I think he's like the key for their offense. He might be a good fit there. Yeah.
There's also Malik Neighbors coming back. Doesn't really correlate with the Giants defense though, but
that can. I think Neighbors is a good enough player, and like his skill set is fine. Like you can play a receiver with their defense.
Okay.
Like if he goes for 150 and 2 touchdowns, and they're beating the Eagles, and the Eagles offense has been struggling, they're having to drop back a ton. Everyone, I think the mistake people make is they think with receivers like, oh, like we want them to be like playing from behind in garbage time, and like they're like chasing and getting a ton of targets. And sometimes that works out, but also sometimes look at the Cowboys last week. Sometimes you fall behind and you have to throw a lot and you're very predictable and it's not very efficient. So, a team scoring points to get there also helps. And because it'd be different if the Giants were like 4,700, but they're super cheap. So like, the Giants could lose this game, but their defense could still score 8 or 9 points. And Neighbors gets there as they're trying to claw their way back in. So there's a lot of pass, I guess, for the game script for playing those 2 together.
Yeah, and the eye test Also monitor Devin Singletary. I mean, if he still has that groin issue, Tyrone Tracy has just looked electric. Pass catching running back. You could do the old running back defense correlation, even though definitely don't force it, but it's definitely viable around that Deontay Foreman. He's a little bit higher than Foreman at this point, but and then for the defense, real quick, obviously it'd be on another team, but Buffalo Bills against Will Levis all day. It's a little easier to pay up for defense on FanDuel than it is DraftKings, and that's another low-hanging fruit, I call it.
Who was it? The Bills?
Bills defense is at home against Will Levis, so we usually like to target defenses against Deshaun and Levis. And I like your Joe Mixon take, by the way. I had a practice build with a skinny of him and then Tank Dell kind of variating, because Dell's definitely getting targeted now that Nico's out for a little while. So that's another game that it's hard to stack that kind of a game because Green Bay's so spread out, but definitely one of the 4 games that I initially saw with the game totals that looked like could have some good game environment.
And you don't have to stack it to benefit. You see the DraftKings Millie Maker winner?
Oh yeah. Well, that's usually the nine parlay on the Millie Maker ones, but
yeah, he had $3. Three Buccaneers, I should say.
Yep.
Now he has $1 million.
God, Chris striking again.
Yeah, he's putting on quite a performance this season. He was one of my guys coming into the year. So
same here. Love him.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Darnold, Jefferson, Addison. Oops, not Davis. With the Jameson Williams bring back, kind of building on that game environment, getting a little nutty in Minnesota, which we can see sometimes, and hopefully, and the Aiden Hutchinson injury, which was hard to watch with his leg, but that should afford Darnold some more time to throw. I think they might make a move, maybe Hassan Reddick or a different pass rusher before the trade deadline. But for this week, wheels up on the Vikings.
Absolutely.
All right. We will see you all on Twitter. We will see you in the Discord. Check us out, oneweekseason.com. We will see you in the top of the leaderboards and hopefully joining us and binking. It's bink season, week 7. Early in the morning, no coffee today. So, all right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, or Maximus, I should say. And thank you all for joining us. We will see you again next week.